All right. Hi, everyone. I'm Tony Roy, President, Connecticut Council for the Social Studies. I've been president for the Connecticut Council for 3 years, and I just signed on for another 2-year term. So I'll be continuing on that role until the end of the school year. Oh, it's scary to say 2025. Scary to say that. But it's been a great time working and serving the community. Also, I'm a classroom teacher at Global Experience Magnet School. It's a magnet school that's part of the Bloomfield Public Schools District. And if you want to learn anything more about the organization, Connecticut Council for the Social Studies, you can go to our website, which you see there on the screen. That's my email up there. And also, if you're interested in learning anything about me, you can check out canoe52.com. That's where my wife and I, we document our progress of canoeing all 50 states. This summer, we'll get up to number 25. And hopefully it won't take another 8 years to get the rest of the 50. So it's a long-term goal. So you can see all that going up. We're going to Illinois, Missouri, Iowa, and Indiana this year. So really looking forward to it. Go with our dog, we drive, all that stuff.
Why 52 as opposed to 50?
Oh, DC
District
and Puerto
of
Rico.
Columbia? Okay.
Yeah, and then Puerto Rico. It's a little bit of a political statement, I guess.
Anyway, works for me.
Yeah. All right, let's go ahead and get started here. So first off, this is going to be all about inquiry. Oh, I guess I should introduce my my topic here, which is scaffolding inquiry. And basically, this is a outline of what the Connecticut framework looks like. We just finished the social studies standards project. We submitted the standards to the Connecticut State Department of Ed back in May. They're doing an internal review before it goes to the State Board of Education this fall. We're hoping to have new standards, Connecticut's first social studies standards, by September, maybe October of the school year. So we're really, really excited about that. What's excellent about the framework or the standards is that it builds upon the framework that everyone is so familiar with from 2015. And really, if you think about like visually, conceptually, what is inquiry, it really boils down to 2 pieces. What can students do and what do they know, or what can they understand? So you can see on the left-hand side in the green, the purple, the dark blue, and the red color there, that's what they can do. That's the inquiry side of things, right? So students can develop questions and plan inquiry. They can think like a historian. They can evaluate sources and use evidence. They can communicate conclusions and take informed action. Now, not the other side of the coin, but the part that really makes us all cook is what students know or what they understand, which you'll see on the right-hand column, which is that lighter purple, the yellow, the green, and the blue. And this is really about what students understand. They understand history, which means understanding like a historian means that you can understand change, continuity, and context. You can understand perspectives. You can understand causation and argumentation. And just like that, social studies students can understand economics and the subsets of that, geography, the subsets of that, and civics, the subsets of that. So these are kind of the themes that drive the different parts of the, I guess, the content strand of the inquiry or the social studies framework. So here it is again. This is just the inquiry arc. This is just the what they can do in the green, purple, blue, and I keep wanting to say orange, but I think that's red. And really what we're going to focus on today is 1, 3, and 4. We're going to look at what that students developing questions, evaluating sources and using evidence, and communicating conclusions and taking informed action. And what we're going to look at basically is how I've helped students in my classroom reach those goals. Before we get too much into it, I do want to just show you a little bit about the inquiry standards coding system. Basically, when you get the standards document, when you look at the actual standards, this is what it's going to show. Right now, what we're looking at is some standards for inquiry standards for Dimension 3. And you can see by the part that's circled, this is like the code that we use to kind of organize the document. And then what's over here is the inquiry standard. That's where it says gather relevant evidence from multiple sources. So there's the code, and then there's also the standard. Now, to break down the code even further, the first number is the grade or the course. K through 8, it either says K, 1, 3, 5, 7, whatever the grade is, all the way up to 8. And then when you get to high school, it's either US or it will be civics or modern world, because those are the 3 main courses at that level, at the high school level. And schools do it in different order. So weren't trying to say, oh, in 9th grade, you have to do this grade, this topic or that topic. The second thing is just inc, just means inquiry. So it's an inquiry standard. 3 aligns with the dimension. so that the inquiry dimension that's aligned with the C3 framework, right? So that 1, 3, and 4, like we're going to look at today, this is the third, and you can see that it lines up right here. And then also the inquiry skill indicator. In this case, the second one says B. Now, anything that says 5 or ends with a B, it's all the same skill articulated K to 12. So if that said K, Inc. 3, B, that would be that skill for inquiry, but at the kindergarten level. If it said US, it would be that skill for inquiry, but it would be at the high school level. So anything that ends in A, B, C, D, E, F, I think it goes up to maybe G. Those are all the same skill articulated K-12. Now that's not the same for the content standards. It was a little too tricky to make it that parallel, but at least for the inquiry standards, we're able to do that. So when you're working in cross departments or intergrade level teams, you can speak to the same inquiry standard basically and measure that skill possibly over time. All right, let's not get too deep into that. Let's get into what we're really going to talk about today, which again is the different strands or the different dimensions. These are some standards for dimension 1. This is A, B, and C. So in A, the questions, they explain how questions reflect an enduring issue. This is at the high school level. Students can explain how supporting questions contribute to an inquiry, and they determine the type of sources. So these are just some sample standards I pulled from dimension 1 that we're going to illustrate a little bit. So here's what I've done in my classroom. Before we get too deep into it though, I want to tell you about the, at the very bottom, honorable mention, the Right Question Institute. They have the question formulation technique. It's really fantastic. It's a great way to get some agency in the classroom and allow students to develop questions to begin an inquiry. If you haven't done it, look it up, check it out. There's videos online. It's amazing. So enough of that, but this is something that I've used in my classroom. I just call it questions in the round. And essentially this is a protocol where students are sitting in a circle. So if you're familiar with restorative circles, it's kind of based on that, but it's an academic application. So students are sitting in a circle. I usually have them with a little whiteboard, but even if you had a piece of paper, this would work as well. And basically what I do is I say, okay, we're going to try to figure out what makes a really good question. So we have them in a circle, and basically I give them a prompt. When you're first going to meet someone, what is a good question to ask them? Not like, hi, what's your name? Or, what's your zodiac sign? I guess you can have that, but I try to encourage them to do a little bit more deeper questions than that. So then we have everyone write down all the questions. I usually give about a minute so kids can think about it, students can think about it. And then they put their paper in the center of the circle, just face up. Their name's not on it. Somewhat anonymous. And then what I have them do is take their pencil or pen or marker and they get up and they walk around and they check off which questions they think are really engaging or relevant. And then what we do is we push all the ones out that got the lower scores and we look at the higher score one and we say, all right, well, what's so great about this? Why is this a good question? And then they start to say, well, it's not surface level. There's many answers. You can really understand where someone's coming from, so perspective kind of based things. And then we try it again and we do it with another question. So what's a good question to guide your life? And usually by the second time they go through that, they start to get it. If you need to do more, you can always do more. If you want to do fun prompts, you could do fun prompts if you want. And basically we go until we have a good sense of what a good question looks like. And then what we do, so again, I'm scaffolding the heck out of this. So then in another lesson, this would be in a whole nother day, we come back and we talk about what is a compelling question. Because in my class, I use this for seniors. Really, you could do this for any grade, but I use this for seniors when they're starting their capstone research. They pick a topic and they research a question for the whole year and they write an argumentative paper, they make action on it. So this is kind of the different lessons that I do to get them there. And so we talk about, what's a compelling question versus what's a supporting question. I got the visual up there. And I say, if you're looking at something like the Parthenon, the compelling part is the frieze in the cornice, right? That's the compelling part. It's interesting. People want to see it. But the supporting questions are all the things that are the pillars, right? The columns that are holding up the whole thing. So you need both to create such an amazing structure. And then we talk a little bit more. I give them some definitions from the C3. And you can see my Bitmoji there before I had a beard in the lower corner. I haven't updated these in a little over a year. But anyway, I tell them what a compelling question is: relevant, concise, and reflective, right? You got to care about it. It's got to be relevant today. And, people that research the topic have to care about it too, right? They want to, there's got to be some kind of debate going on. It's clearly worded. And also it's like something that's either an enduring issue or it's research-based. And again, I pulled this right from the C3 teachers. And I can make these slides available afterwards. I'll put in the link from the YouTube page. So then, all right, so we give them some definitions. And then I start telling them, okay, also they got to be rigorous. So if you know anything about rigorous questions, this is Webb's depth of knowledge. I try to push them over to DOK 3 and 4. So either strategic thinking or extended thinking. So I'm trying to just push the questions to the next level to make sure they're appropriately challenging. Again, this is a few days worth of work here. Supporting questions. And so once they kind of have their compelling question, I have them start thinking about supporting questions. What are the small questions we need to get to that big question? All righty. And then I give an example. So here's an example between this is like an example I use in class. What's the relationship between childhood trauma and student achievement? And then I say, okay, if that's the compelling question, we usually try to come up with a list. And then I show them, they say a list, and I said, well, here's some of the lists that I came up with supporting questions. You can see there's a lot of them, but when they do their research, they're not going to look at all these questions. That's way too many. And then we're like, okay, let's look at all these different questions. Are these questions compelling or not? And then what's interesting is students start to see in some cases they are, in some cases they aren't. And the same question, depending on what you need it for, makes it dependent if it's compelling or not. So it really has, it's a little bit more nuanced than just saying there's black and white answer. And I think that's appropriate for students to know that, it's not always cut and dry. All right. So that's a lot of building. So after that, I have them write their own compelling question and their own supporting questions. And we're going to talk a little bit about, then they start doing their research. The a challenge for students is, okay, I got these great questions. Now, what do I do with this information? So what we're going to do now is we're going to look at what do we do with the information? First off, we have to be able to gather relevant sources or relevant information from sources. We have to organize and prioritize our evidence. And then we have to make our claims and identify the counterclaims. And this really all falls under dimension 3 of the inquiry arc. So how do I do it? Well, first off, what I do is I have them identify their compelling and their supporting questions from earlier, right? And I color code them. So your compelling question, it's just gray because it's the overarching question. And then your supporting questions, I have them color code all the supporting evidence that goes with supporting questions green, all the evidence that goes with orange questions, orange. And then the other one for the blue one, obviously that's for the third question that they have. So then what does this turn into? All right, so basically I have them use a slideshow to organize their research. So then you can see all of the evidence that you pull that's related to your supporting question, your first supporting question, they will put them on green slides. All the evidence that goes from your second question, you put it all on orange slides. All the evidence for your third question goes all on blue slides. And this way I can monitor at any time what part of the research process a student is on just by looking at their screen. Are you on your green question, your orange question, your blue question? And this way I don't have to know the question. I can just say, all right, well, what did you learn with your green question? And then they can go over that. I don't have to go back and know their green question to be able to solicit the response. And then if they're stuck, I could say, okay, well, let's try to reorganize within the orange. Maybe if we can take these slides and put them in different order, it'll make more sense. Or maybe your orange really needs to go first when it's time to write, and your blue needs to go second, and your green needs to go last, depending on how it develops. But we can talk about it. Really, we could talk about it in chunks as opposed to disparate information scrawled how I used to do it all over a notebook, just everywhere. Well, in college, I had more notebooks. In high school, I wasn't really a notebook guy yet. But anyway, that's an aside. So then okay, so what are they doing on the slides? So I have them put their supporting question there. I have them put their source. Now, if they're using a database, you got to tell kids to get the permalink. If they don't get that permalink, they're not going to be able to go back and find it. So, I mean, that's getting a little deep if you're teaching students how to use databases, especially if you're using like the ones that are available through the Connecticut State Library. But anyway, so they find a quote, they put on the slide, and then I use a say, mean, matter approach to developing inferences. I find that this works in terms of being able to identify what the quote says. What does it mean? So what's the interpretation, or excuse me, what's the explanation of like what the author's trying to say? And then finally, interpretation. How does this answer your supporting and or your compelling question? And as you know, this basically outlines your whole paragraph here. I mean, it gives them 4 prompts. I mean, that's 4 sentences. I mean, that's pretty close to a full paragraph. I mean, all I have to do is like finesse it to kind of get it. So I always tell them, you got to go for 5 to 7 at least in these paragraphs. You know what I mean? So kids are always like, what's the least amount I can do? 3, right? I'm like, no, not 3. You're not getting there with 3. But anyway, if they're answering the supporting question in that first sentence, right, that's your topic sentence right there. If they're then stating the quote and citing the quote, and then they explain what it means, that's 3 right there. Little interpretation, little transition to your next paragraph. You're good. You got the whole thing right here. So bringing it down like this changed the game for me in terms of major essay writing. I do it also for like the smaller essays, but for big essays, this is really helpful. It was a struggle. It took me like 5 years to develop this idea, by the way. All right, so that's how they organize their research. Now what we're going to look at is dimension 4, where it has to do with constructing arguments, using claims, analyzing the characteristics and causation of problems. So we're going to get into some action planning. And then also we're going to get into like, how do we take this action? So we're going to be developing our arguments for communication. And then we're also going to be looking at how is it that we can, take action, take informed action. So a little bit, this is about forming the argument. So now you know the colors already. This is the introduction and the conclusion organizer that I use. And really what I'm just trying to illustrate is you're making the same point in your introduction, your conclusion, right? You start broad, you end with your thesis. That's the point of your paper. That's why the triangle is upside down. You're narrowing down to your thesis. That's your point of your paper. And then you put all your green, your orange, and blue in your introductory paragraph. And that's the same order that things play out in your paper, right? You got all your greens, you got all your oranges, you got all your blues. You're already at 10 paragraphs if you're doing that. And then you have your conclusion where you're restating your thesis and you're restating your ideas again. Once we get into this, I have them, you see that little red one down there? I have them go back and add, this is just for the purposes of my class, add a solution, propose a solution based on all your research. They actually add an additional paragraph than what I've outlined here, but just so you know, this is like the basic. All right, cool. So that's basically how they write the essay. All right, this is, let's see here. This basically is, okay, so they've written their essay and they've gotten the grade, they've gone through all the feedback, and now in my class, I have them take informed action. So now they've done all this research. For my course, I have them go out and interview an expert in the field. So like someone that's a professional in the field that isn't a part of their family. Again, this is just for my class. Isn't a part of their family and is not in the school, so they can get out there in a professional environment to like interact with folks. I don't know, it's just a great learning experience. Anyway, once they collect all that information and they kind of have an idea for what their solution is, we take a step back and we say, okay, what's your problem? Let's go ahead and determine the root cause. And the protocol we use is the 5 why analysis. This actually was developed by the Toyota Motor Company. They were having problems with their with their manufacturing system, like having the raw product and the end product, and like how do you make it along that line? And they couldn't figure out what the issue was, so they did a 5 why analysis, and it kind of took off from there. Each time you ask the question why. So here's the problem that we model sometimes at school. School lunch does not taste good. Okay, why does it not taste good? This is the responses that I get every time. There's no salt. There's no flavor. Okay, why is there no flavor? You know what I'm saying? So now we're pulling back the different layers. Okay, there's rules and regulations. Well, why are there rules and regulations? Health. You know, we go all the way back down to like what the root cause is, and then I challenge them to address the root cause. Let's get that 5th why, and let's see if we can go ahead and come up with something to address the root cause. So now what do? We go over here to layers of community action. We're thinking about what our root cause is, and we're thinking, okay, what are some things that I could do along this sliding scale of action? in either for myself, my school, community, state, or nation, or world. And I have them list out what are one or two things. I'll tell you, sometimes kids, they fill up this whole thing, they need extra spaces. There's not enough space on this page. Other times you'll see where they're struggling. And I'll tell you, sometimes if they're struggling in areas, I don't force them to go ahead and fill them all in. I say, you know, maybe you're just not ready to think at that level, or maybe something else is really more important to you. I mean, especially through the pandemic, I had a lot of students focusing on self and community, right? Because it was like, what can I do for me in order to make sure that this problem doesn't happen to me? It was very enclosed because we were, as you remember, we were quarantined. Now that we're transitioning back, I'm starting to get more students doing things in the school and community. And then my hope is within a year or two, we'll be back out to doing things at the state level. You know, world is always a little bit difficult, but you could do things at the world. You could do things at the world level. I always encourage it. So, all right. So now they got these documents that they're working with. So then the next thing we have to do is we have to come up with an action plan. So they select one of these items that are on this list. Select one of these items. And then what we do is, first off, we have them think about their problem. And I say, okay, what is your vision? If this problem was solved, what would the world look like? So they establish a vision. And if you want to take this one step further and introduce some SEL, you could do some design thinking and have people interview each other, right? So like I'm interviewing about somebody else's topic and they tell me what their vision is. And I like go through the process of coming up with a plan. Like you could do a lot of different things to like get students talking at this point. So they establish a vision. I have them draw a picture. Even if stick figures, you see my drawings are terrible. We'll draw a picture right here because it gets that visual thinking going. And then what we do is we say, okay, now think about your community action worksheet with the little world at the bottom where you had all those different things. What's an idea that you want to focus on? Write it in here. Okay. After they have them write the idea, I have them just do 7 steps. 7 steps seems to be enough. I mean, for students that are like doing something really intense, I mean, flip the paper over, do it on the back, right? But 7 seems to be enough for most students. Usually it's 5, 6, 7 is the range that they're in. And so they say what the steps are. So then now they have their steps for action. And then finally, they come through and they develop a list of resources that they need. What are the human resources you need? What are the, I don't know, economic resources you need? What are the physical things you might need? I don't know, paper, pencil, volunteers. I don't know, whatever the thing is, they come up with a list. And then what they do is I have all the students like document all this into an action plan and, into a portfolio. And then they document their progress as they go through. They like do the thing, they take the pictures of like for evidence. And then what I have them do is I have them evaluate the outcome. And the evaluation of the outcome is the assessment, not whether or not they were successful. You could be unsuccessful and evaluate what went wrong and what you could have done differently or what you could have done better, and you could still get the A. That's just the way that, again, that's how I work in my classroom. Of course, our portfolio is part of it's a much bigger thing. They have academic goals that they're working on. They put their paper in there, all their different research pieces. I have them do a literature review, annotated bibliography. They have to do a presentation at the end of the year, plus their action plan. So it's a pretty intense project. But again, I just wanted to show you what I'm doing for dimensions 1, 3, and 4. Again, Anthony Roy, President, Connecticut Council for the Social Studies. I've had a great time presenting this information. I hope that it was helpful. And if you have any questions or you want to find out more about Connecticut Social Studies, go to connecticutsocialstudies.org, sign up, become a member. That would be amazing.